Hello and welcome to SUFCtv Live. Today we have two special guests, our women's vice captains, Gabby Howell, our number 8, and our number 10, Darcy Wells. Welcome, girls, to the show.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you.
Now, we will just tell people who've been waiting 5 minutes for us to get on with it that we had, just like last week, a little conversation just to the three of us with no one else listening because I'd made some mistakes with the stream once again. But we've got it working quicker than I did last week, so we can now just get on with the interview. Now, you may not have to go into as much detail as we just did beforehand, but I will ask just for the people who are listening, how are you guys finding self-isolating at the moment and the lack of football?
To be fair, I think we're both struggling without football. It's a bit of a breather from normal life in a way, but I think everyone's missing a lot of things, so it's just sort of life at the minute, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely.
To kick a ball.
Yeah, it does make you realise how unimportant football can be at times when all this is going on. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about football. So maybe let's keep it relevant for the next hour. Well, let's start with one of you. Let's start with Gabby. Describe to us your journey with football from a young age leading up to Sutton.
Well, I've always been involved in football. I've got 3 older brothers, so as soon as I sort of started to be able to walk, I was watching them play, and I used to find it really fun kicking the ball in the field and chasing after it. And then, lucky enough, I got scouted for Crystal Palace. Done all my childhood there really. Played games, went up to the women's teams, and then I had enough really and went to Shilton where I played with Cindy, and that's where I met Cindy, Tamara, and a few players from last season. And then we all moved to Sutton. It's just quite a short and sweet story.
How much do you I've asked Cindy this question as well, but having watched a lot of men's football and seen and played obviously plenty of women's football, do you notice much of a difference in the two games?
To be honest, I think there's a lot of difference. I mean, I go and watch my brothers majority every weekend on a Saturday, and it is a lot more physical, a lot more swearing that goes on the pitch, and the game's a lot quicker. But I wouldn't take that away from women's football. I think you've got to treat it as two different games. Women's football, I mean, this is the first team I've played with where we actually play football. We keep the ball. We like to look for a pass. We go back. We don't just sort of hoof and hope, really. But I think if you get a women footballer to take a penalty, there'll be no difference in a woman and a man's. But the game, in terms of the speed and the power, there is quite a lot of difference there. But both just as good as each other. I enjoy watching both, and I enjoy playing. So.
Darcy, I feel like you would almost disagree in one set because you have had a tendency to get a bit aggressive at times when the game might not necessarily be going your way. You wear your heart on your sleeve on the pitch, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, definitely. I've always been pretty much of a hot-headed person, especially on the pitch, and sometimes my emotions take the better of me, but it all comes from a good place, and I'm very passionate about the way I play and the way my team plays, and if nothing's going our way, then I do show my frustration, but as I said, it does come from a good place, and I just want myself and the team to do well.
I could not agree more. Tell us a little bit about your journey coming into Sutton and growing up with football.
Okay, so I started playing football when I was about 4, just playing at school with the boys. Started off in a boys team, and my dad never used to want to come and watch me. It was only because my mum actually took me to the boys training session, and my mum then went back to my dad and said, "You need to come and watch her. She's brilliant." And then my dad eventually came and watched me, and it all took off from there. And then I got signed for Arsenal when I was 7 years old. Played there for 7 years, and then I went to Chelsea, and it just just grew and grew. I just fell in love with the game even more.
What was it like being in the infrastructure of those larger teams, despite obviously not as much attention was going into it compared to maybe like the men's academies?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please? I could hear you.
What sort of differences were there between sort of like a 7-year-olds Chelsea and Arsenal compared to what like a man might get? Like, what's the structure like? How frequently were you playing, or how did it work? Was it more training?
I was training at least 3 times a week in the academy level, and then obviously playing on a Sunday. But then when I went up to the age groups, it got a lot bigger. And then when I played for Charlton as a 16-year-old playing in the Premier League, we used to play during the week, and it was pretty much a full-time thing, which was really good for me and a great experience. But yeah, it is a lot of difference to how I would say that the boys would get treated. They would be pretty much full-time from the start as a young kid, as women would not get that sort of treatment.
And you came to Sutton on the back of a really, really good season. I'm terrible because I can't remember was it Bromley?
Bromley!
And you scored a ton of goals there before coming over to Sutton, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I scored 31 goals in 24 games, and that was on my comeback, so I hadn't played football for at least 2 years.
What was it? Was it something specific that held you back, or from playing?
Yeah, it's a few personal issues, and obviously I had my daughter, so I had some time off.
And there's a couple of players in the Sutton team that have had daughters, and that must help you see how they work out with the balance of life and mix up the football with the raising the children as well.
Sorry?
Did you learn anything from some of the other players who also are raising children whilst playing for Sutton?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Faye Butler is obviously one of the biggest legends at Sutton. You can argue with that, and she's a brilliant mum on and off the pitch. Obviously, I've learned so much from her, and she's really experienced. And obviously, she's pregnant again, which is amazing. So yeah, I can't wait for her to come back. Hopefully she comes back and smashes another season with us.
And Gabby, how long have you been at Sutton now?
This would have just been my 2nd season, so I joined last season.
You joined along with Cindy?
Yeah, I was a bit later than Cindy. I sort of skipped the trial season, and Mrs. Duncan asking to have a late trial, and he gave me that with an email saying I need to impress, so the pressure was on.
And run me through what a trial's like there at Sutton. What did they put you through the paces to see how you're good enough?
Well, they ask you your positions as the first step, and then so you're already comfortable, and then they watch you, but you don't feel like you're being watched, so it takes the pressure off there. And they encourage you to speak and be confident, and then after the session they'll pull you over and say what they like about you. And then I mean, when I had it, funny enough, he said he liked my touch, but I don't know if he'll say that now. But yeah, do you know what I mean? So yeah, and then they asked me to sign. I was quite lucky. I only had a 1-day experience, but I think it is professionally done, and they set out so many different tasks, and they play games, so you can really show off your ability for all types of players. If you're a skillful player, if you're a player that likes to find the pass, they will suit that for you in all the trials, which is quite a good thing. Well, no, it's not quite. It is a good thing.
Now, having watched you play, Gabby, compared slightly to Darcy, who is more of a guaranteed number 10 in that position, you can play in both the attacking 3 and the defensive 2. What's your preference in terms of position? Do you prefer to be more attacking, or do you like the securing the back?
I prefer to be more attacking. I mean, last season I was actually playing right back, and then for all my other clubs I was holding in the midfield. But I've never played in this formation. I'm happy to sort of play wherever on the pitch, but I do like to attack, and I like to try to find passes that other people wouldn't find. But I sort of had a confidence knock a while ago, years before I joined Sutton, and Duncan, JJ, the rest of the team have really helped in me gaining my confidence back. And just near the end of the season, I don't know if you agree, but I started to turn a lot more on the ball, was trying to be a lot more positive than I had been. So if you're one of the players that struggle for confidence, it's a great place to go because the team rally you up and so do the coaches. But yeah, also I like to be more attacking, but I can sort into the more defensive roles if needs be.
Well, considering what you've just told me of your history of your positions, you don't really look out of place when you do go in that attacking positioning. And I can say from experience of getting to the games early, you're usually the last one on the pitch at the warm-up taking shots from about 35 yards. You and Tamara like to have a good go at that for just before you rush back in for the team talk. But speaking of... Go on.
It's just a little... We all the free kick takers like to have a few shots, but we sort of all gas each other up just before we take it. And when you score, even though it's an opening goal and you should really be scoring, it's like you've really achieved something. So it gives you a bit of a confidence boost. So we all try to leave on a scoring one.
Now, we obviously don't have Tamara on the call, but whilst I've got both you and Darcy, I have to say that we've scored quite a lot of free kicks this season, and you guys are usually the ones standing on them or taking the shots. How much time are you putting in on training, making sure that they are perfect, or that you set up your blocks and your runs to put off the other team?
I mean, shout out to our coach Duncan. Every Thursday session, he's pulling us all the attackers to one side at the start, and we all practice our shooting and free kicks from there. And I think that's helped us all a lot to grow and to be able to have that ability to be confident and wanting to take these free kicks, because I've never been a free kick taker. It was only that this season Duncan has put me on them, and I've been scoring quite a few, so that's a bit of a touch, really.
Speaking of Duncan, what was it like introducing yourself to him when you first came to Sutton, and how's it been having him as your manager throughout the whole last year or two for both of you?
To be honest, I remember I was absolutely bricking it when I first met Duncan, because I hate going to trials, and that was it. And when I got the email through saying I needed to impress, oh God, I remember I was so nervous. But I think he's one of them people that will tell you if you've done something wrong, but he'll also praise you when you've done something right. And I think that's the best sort of manager you can get, because they don't sugarcoat it for you. So it's a way of sort of going out on the pitch and proving them wrong, but they know that you can prove them wrong, and he compliments you greatly when you do something really well for him. I mean, he's one of the best managers that I've had, but I do remember I was absolutely bricking it when I first met him.
And what about you?
I met Duncan last year through a friend of mine who introduced me to him, and I couldn't attend any of the trials, but when I met Duncan, I was as Gabby, I was bricking it as well, because it's quite intimidating, really. Like he means business.
And am I right that Duncan first saw a video of you before he watched you play?
Yeah. I don't know if I can say this, but yeah, I got signed by a video. Can I say that? Can I say that? You're releasing information now, Darcy. Sorry. I'm listening. I'm sorry.
But that must have given you a confidence boost, knowing that the history of some of your play has obviously caught his eye, and he thought he wants to have you in the team, despite not actually seeing you play in person.
Yeah, no, definitely. It gave me a massive confidence boost, but because I wasn't as fit as some of the girls, so I was only at Bromley, and I wouldn't say it's a great league, so this was a step up for me, and for Duncan to sign me by just watching a video. I mean, it just gave me so much more confidence. And
Here she is now.
Impressive, and hopefully I did.
How has it been? I'm just putting up some highlights on the stream at the moment. There's Tamsin Potter's screamer against Hackney. But how have you guys found this season in general? Obviously, we didn't get to finish it, but we were second in the league, and we were on a lovely unbeaten run despite a unfortunate cup game. Were you happy with how the season went as a whole?
I think it went well. I think, like you said, by the end of the season, we were smashing it. It's a shame, really, that we weren't smashing it at the beginning of the season as much because we had the ability to. But I do think that also comes down a bit to how much we've grown as a team. We talk quite a bit. It's a really good atmosphere at training, good atmosphere before games. We rally each other up, and to be honest, it has been a very enjoyable season on and off the pitch. Hopefully the cup final gets paid because that'd be exciting. But yes, it's one of them bittersweet story because we couldn't finish it, unfortunately. But I think the season's gone really well, and I'll second that as well. I think this season's been one of my best seasons yet. Obviously coming back and playing for Bromley, then signing for Sutton, this has been one of the best seasons I've ever played.
Well,
playing for Duncan he's a great manager.
Well, the people watching will just about see one of your shots from outside the box against Hackney as well. Lovely finish.
I'm going to claim that assist, Darcy, because that was my head and my foot.
But do you guys pay much attention to the stats that you're producing? Do you like to keep a record of how you're doing?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I mean, it's not hard to count one. It's only 2 goals. It's a bit of a funny story because always at training, me and Clarky get the bit of the last because we've got the least amount of goals and we're in that front 3. And it's just basically Tamara, Darcy and Faye that are all scoring. So it's a bit of a funny story, but we all do talk about it.
And so obviously we can talk about scoring goals for the whole time, but this season we've managed to always be either several goals ahead or keep a clean sheet or keep the tally nice and low, especially if we've conceded early. How useful is it for you guys to have the back 4, the relatively consistent back 4 that you guys have with the likes of Neves, White, Cindy, the captain, of course, Emily, Evie? How useful is it having that solid?
I would say you've got one of the best back 4s in the league. I mean, Cindy Colliver is solid, absolutely solid at the back. Jennifer Neves, like one of the youngest, and so is Evie. They're both just brilliant. I mean, I would not feel uncomfortable with them being at the back. I feel safe, and if we've got an attacking, they're attacking us. I mean, I feel confident with our back 4 that we'll win the ball back. But what's nice about them and all is that they're all slightly different in their own ways. Jen's very skillful, she's good on the ball. Cindy's solid, she wins everything in the air. Alex is extremely fast and loves a good challenge and can really ping a ball. And Evie's got to be one of the calmest players I think I've ever played with. Everything she does, she just seems so calm and so she knows exactly what she's doing that it sort of gives us at the front, they sort of take the pressure off.
And also, the people on the stream will have just seen, so unlucky not to go in, her volley that hit the crossbar. I believe it was against New London Lionesses. I'm not sure now, off the top of my head. But yeah, she's a very composed player. All of a lot of the players who look as though, I'm running out of words now. Nobody in the team looks as though or plays as if there's a massive age gap between any of them. You don't see the difference between the really young players and the more experienced in terms of their ability. Would you agree?
No, I totally agree. I think as well, like, I played in many teams where there's an age group like ours, and you see the difference in ability and the difference in maturity. But I think all the young players, I mean, me and Darcy are particularly, like, I can't say that word, but we're not old. I mean, Darcy's 21 and I'm 20, but I think everyone's on the same wave, that everyone likes to have a laugh, but we also know when to be serious. And ability-wise, I think all the young players are going to be extraordinary, but they're learning from the best really in the league. I mean, Tamara will teach you a lot, Cindy will teach you a lot, Faye will teach you a lot. It's a really nice, healthy team, really.
And obviously, recently we had Hayley Hallford join in. How do you find it whenever someone new comes in or somebody gets called up from the academy? Do you make any special efforts to sort of welcome them into the team? Do you have any sort of first team days out and stuff like that?
No, we don't have anything specific. I think we're quite a easy team to get along with. So as soon as they come to training, I think they sort of feel quite welcome. I mean, I don't shut up, so I don't. I will probably talk to them until their ears completely chewed off. But I think it's really nice when the person from the younger teams go all the way, because it shows that we give them that opportunity. But you'll be surprised how good. Like, I'm not saying that they weren't going to be good, but some of them that have come up and trained with us, we're so, like, they're better than what we were when we were younger. They're such good footballers, and you sort of learn a bit from them as well. So it's quite nice, and it's quite rewarding that they want to be where you are. It's quite a big compliment.
Well, I'm going to ask both of you individually, what has been your favourite Sutton moment? It can be from this season or the one before. Obviously, I might not remember the one from before. But what would you say has been your favourite moment from this season?
For me, probably, I've got two favourite moments. Probably when I come back from injury and I scored an absolute screamer. Can I just say, not one to boost your own horn, are you? No, not one to blow my own trumpet or anything. But yeah, no, probably that goal and the free kick I scored against Leighton Orient to put us through to the semi-final. My one will probably be that goal that I got. There's only two. I think you all know what one I'm on about. Darcy wasn't there to celebrate with me, to be honest. I was quite fuming about that, but we won't get into that. But I also think when I had to step up as vice captain for the first time was quite a big moment for me, because suddenly I had to take the talk before the game, and Cindy set such a high standard that I sort of wanted to make her proud, make the team proud, and make the managing team proud. So that was a good moment for me as well.
And how and when you guys eventually come back, what's your plans for the future? Do you want to try and get Sutton up as many leagues as possible?
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, this is only my first season with Sutton, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else really. The club has welcomed me so well. I mean, the management is amazing. Cindy Colliver is one of the best captains I've played under. I just love the team, and I can't wait for us to grow as a team and just win a league, win some silverware. Silver? You want gold there? Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, you know what I meant. No, it's alright. It's the same silverware, but it's gold really. Well, I thought I put it wrong.
Now,
no, but I do agree with what you said.
I don't want to make this too controversial, but one of the most emotional and exciting games of the season that didn't fortunately go our way was another cup semi-final where we sadly lost 1-0 after a 90th minute fiasco. Now, you two being two of the most passionate players on the pitch, just for anyone who isn't aware, Hayley Hallford was on for her first start, I believe, or she was her second start. She was just scored her first goal for the club, and the linesman who was responsible for the and he was connected to the other team as part of the way the league works. He unfortunately raised the flag. It took about 10 minutes before a decision could even be made. The goal was then disallowed, and the other team went down the other end and unfortunately finished the game off for us. But that was some crazy 10 minutes, that last game, and I could see how upset and furious so many people were on the game. But how was it on the pitch? Like, how did it feel in that situation?
I'll start to ask.
I know it's not the nicest question to ask, but we've been talking a lot about positivity, and obviously I'm interested to know what your mindset's like when things aren't necessarily going your way.
I think that's one of the games. I mean, that's football, isn't it? It's going to be controversial. Not everyone's going to agree. Obviously, we can say what we think about that decision from the linesman. I think there's quite a lot of decisions that he made throughout the game, not just that one, that you could have argued. Watching the game back as well, you can sort of see how he called so many offsides that I didn't personally think were offsides, and I think other people will agree with that. But you play football knowing that things like that is going to happen, unfortunately. And it's one of them, you win some, you lose some. And if anything, that made us go out in the next game and do a lot better. I mean, we wasn't our best on that game that day, but we was much the better team. And I think what annoyed me most was all the tweets that happened after the game. But it's one of them, like I say, that's just football. You win some, you lose some. And hopefully we get to play them again and sort of show that we are and we were the better team that day. But that, like I say, it's just football. Can't dwell on it too much.
No, of course not. And yes, like you said, that probably led to an even more passionate performance against Crystal Palace, which was a much more comfortable semi-final. I think we can all agree. Darcy, of all of your goals that are nominated for goal of the season, which one do you think is going to win it?
Well, I've got 3 on there, haven't I? Not one to brag. No, I'm not bragging then, I think. No, probably the one on my comeback against Clapham. So I think that would be the 9th goal on goal of the season.
The game against Clapham, was that the one where you curled it in with your right foot from the...
I did.
Yeah, that was that was one of my my favourites of yours. I think that was in my vote, if I'm allowed to spoil that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the whole nominations loaded onto here, but we will be...
You'd like to know that I was on the nominations, so you basically just done me over there, Conor, I'll be honest.
I have not, because yours is... I've just replayed yours on the YouTube, if anyone's watching, and they can see it right now. What is that about? Did you get the tape measure out to see how far out that shot was?
No, but I can recall all your commentary. I've watched it that many times. Yeah, they're the same.
I was very embarrassed and blushed almost when Cindy was telling me about how you lot apparently watch my commentary over and over and over again. And when I listened back to it, some of them, I realise now why you might want to do it, because I seem to not change my tone of voice, whether it's going 1-0 up or one of you is making it 7-0. They all seem like they're the winner in a cup final. So I'm glad that you guys can get enjoyment out of that. But I realised that there's no level between a nice tap in and a screamer sometimes with my commentary.
That's brilliant, though. I mean, it makes the goal feel a lot more special, and sometimes them tapping goals are more team goals, if that makes sense, and the individual goals are more just on your own. But when you get excited. It makes the goal look 10 times better. So I wouldn't complain. Keep it going. It helps the Instagram, doesn't it, Gab? Yeah.
So looking towards next season, Darcy, are you hoping to be replacing Faye on penalties so that you can get even more on your goal scoring tally?
I mean, yeah. Yeah, no,
I've just given you the idea now to message Duncan.
I think when Faye's not on the pitch, Duncan does normally say, "Go on, have a go." But yeah, no, I think if Faye's not going to be playing this year, so yeah, I would say I'd step up and take him because I wouldn't mind. I'm going in.
How much do you guys enjoy playing at Gander Green Lane? Obviously, it's a pitch it's not necessarily a pitch, but it's a stadium that's been around for years and it's hosted some huge games over the years. And obviously, it's got a great quality pitch there that you guys use for training as well. Compare that to some of the places you go on away games. How much nicer is it to have Gander Green Lane as your home ground?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to go to Hackney Marshes and train on Sunday, that's literally the place I had in mind.
Hackney Marshes has come up every time.
Yeah, I mean, Clapham Common or Hackney Marshes, I mean, that's not where you really want to be playing, is it? If you need to turn up with one ball. We went to Godalming as well and we had to warm up on the sides. You can't warm up on the pitch. And we do, like you say, we practice shooting before the game. The strikers will go off and do their shooting bits. But I think it's a lot better. I mean, we have a drink after the game all the time in the bar. Everyone makes sure they stay for a drink. Sometimes we've gone at the start of the season, went for a Nando's. We had our Christmas meal. We've gone to the Gander quite a few times after the games. It's a really nice team environment that we've got going on, and everyone's so happy to take the win that we all talk about it and we all have a nice little chit chat after the game. Even with the likes of like Tony, he will come and we'll have a nice little chit chat with Tony. The parents that always come to the games as well. It's just nice to sort of evaluate the game and talk about the game with people that watch it like on a day-to-day, well not day-to-day, but when they come to watch you every single time you've got a game on. In comparison to other teams, I don't think I've gone to have a drink once with a previous team that I played for. So it's really nice atmosphere that we've got going on at the club at the minute.
I'm running out of questions now. Give me some of your standouts of the season. Obviously, I'm not going to force you to make your players vote on here, but who have been some of your what's been some of your most impressive moments that weren't yourself but other things that the team has done? Any individual moments?
Do I want to start or do you want me? Okay, yeah, no. I think obviously Jennifer Neves is probably. I know she's really young, but she's one of the best defenders. She's not even a defender, is she, Gab? Is she? Well, no. She last season she was playing. It's a bit roles. What's the word? So she was
Role reversal.
Right wing and I was right. Yeah, because she was right wing and I was right back. And now she's right back and I'm in the attacking three. So it's sort of like we switch roles. But she's one of the players that can play anywhere. I think it's quite obvious that she likes to attack by how much she goes forward and even when she's in defence.
I think one of the most impressive things I've seen from her is her delivery.
Yeah, she can ping a ball in, definitely. Funny enough, it wasn't a game that you was at because it was away. We played, I think it was Victoire, and Jen likes to do. I don't know if you hear, but she always says sorry. She's got a thing about always. Like, you could probably slap her and she will say sorry to you. And it's a little joke that we've all got in the team that she's always saying sorry. And she also tries to go, oh, can you take it? Can you take it? Can you take it? And it was this corner, and she's gone, Gabby, can you take it? And I've gone, no, Jen, just take the corner. She's walked over. And she's only going to score from the corner, hasn't she? And I've gone, you've done that on purpose. You've done that so it looks like you weren't really trying. And then you just gone and scored from it. Like, it's just a normal thing for you.
I believe we have a question from the chat on YouTube from somebody called Claire Jones, and she's asked the question, how old do you have to be to play for the first team? And well, as you guys know, that with Jennifer being only 17 years old, and I believe Evie is only 17, you guys are only 20 and 21.
16.
Evie's 16.
16,
So there's nothing stopping any of these players from being into the first team, and obviously we have the under 21s. And I'm sure Duncan would love me to tell him that once all of this is said and done, we will be having trials for anyone who's interested in trying to impress Duncan. And one of the other things that Claire Jones has put on here is she said, you said earlier that the manager was scary, and if you were looking to change clubs, would that put you off? But I think we can all argue that as menacing as Duncan looks, he's, I think, very lovable on the inside.
I think that come across wrong. He's not scary. I think it's the fact that you're going for a trial at a club like Sutton that makes the whole thing scary. And like I said, he says you need to impress because he's got such good faith in the team that he's got that he's needing someone to come in that's going to impress him. But he's one of the nicest people. He makes sure that you're well on and off the pitch. I mean, he's kept in contact with all of us, making sure that we're okay. I mean, we all had a delivery the other day that he sent us a postcard with a little Easter egg thing, like mini eggs, just to make sure that we're all right. And he's one of the nicest people that you'll meet. I think when we say it was scary, it's just the whole idea of being scary, and he's just wanting people to impress. But if you want to, he will get the best out of you if you're coming to the club, and he'll make sure that you leave feeling the best player that you can be, and he'll push you until you are. So I wouldn't say that'll put anyone off, because once you do meet him, you realise what we mean. It's just the whole situation is scary, but the actual trial in itself and what he can make you become is so worth it. So yeah, I'll second that as well, Gab. Create your own ideas, Darcy.
Well, we all know for sure that Duncan is as pink as he can be at the moment. He's blushing watching this on YouTube.
He's probably sitting there smiling.
But what would you guys both say that you've improved most over the last year? whether it's down to training or mentality?
Go on, Darcy, you go first. Sorry, what was that question again?
What would you think? What do you reckon that you've improved most over the last year or so? Would it be technique, mentality, just success in general?
I mean, as I said to you before, it was a big step up for me to come to Sutton for just playing at Bromley, who's in not a great league, but yeah, it was a step up for me. And Duncan, as I said, he's a great manager, and he does push you to be the best you can be. And he's helped me a lot on and off the pitch. So yeah, I've done really well in becoming more confident as a player going forward, and being greedy actually, and having more shots because I'm not actually a greedy player.
You need to be in your position though.
I know. Duncan says this to me all the time, but I do like creating as much as I love scoring. I mean, scoring is a brilliant feeling, but I do like giving it to someone else sometimes. I wouldn't normally take all the glory.
No. Not being afraid to shoot is always a great skill to have. And the fact that you... see, when I heard that you'd come from Bromley, I assumed there was not much of a gap between Bromley and Sutton based on how easily you settled into the team here.
Oh, really?
Well, because all I knew prior to you coming here is that you bang goals in and you continue to bang goals in. So.
Oh, wow, love that. See, you just give me an even more bigger head than I've got.
Well, that's my job, I feel like. Duncan's got a question for him. Considering we have such a strong youth setup, what advice can you give to young, up-and-coming footballers out there?
I think it's just to be confident, know your ability, and to keep trying, even though, not everyone's going to like you. It's the same in life, not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to like the sort of player you are, but you can't let any of the setbacks push you back. You've got to keep fighting it, keep your confidence up, and you'll get the most out of it, and just enjoy it really, because you don't get the years back, and any opportunities you get, just go for it. Yeah, no, exactly the same as what Gabby said. For me, I'll just say enjoy it as much as you can. Whatever comes your way, just grab it with both hands, and always try your best.
I couldn't agree more. And do you guys have any... I did this towards the end of Cindy's stream. I said, do you have any other interests outside of football that are keeping you busy throughout this time, or like you missed not being able to do?
We've got plenty, me and Darcy. We've got plenty, but obviously when we're not stuck in isolation, we love a night out, me and Darcy. Out of Beckley. I mean, I play netball as well, so that's another thing that I do. Talented.
Multifaceted.
But yeah, I think we love a night out. Obviously, got netball, jobs. Bit boring actually now thinking about it. What else do we do, Darcy? Well, I've got more of a job than you, Gab. Oh yeah, you're a mum. Oh no, I love it though. It's brilliant. It's probably the best job in the world.
I probably should ask this because, actually Duncan didn't tell me to, and he has just said that you two are two of the best people you could ever meet. Make him laugh every time and give their all on the pitch. We are very lucky to have them. So he wants you guys to blush now over the...
He's floating back in it. People do say we are the characters in the change rooms. I'm not sure if you read the programmes, but that's a regular question. And me and Darcy always get put in that. I mean, I'm not one to toot our own horn, but we do get told we are comical.
How did it feel for both of you to be asked to be vice captains at Sutton? Had you been given captaincy before anywhere else? Like, was it something special?
I mean, Gabby's already the vice captain, so this is probably my first season as vice captain. Yeah, no, it's a huge honour for me to be even asked that. because it's going to be my second season at Sutton. So yeah, it's a huge honour, and I can't wait to get started and give my all to the club and to my teammates. For me, I was vice captain at Palace the whole time I was there, and when I went to development, like the women's teams, I started to be captain on and off. So I wasn't nervous about it, but I think I was more touched to be asked from Sutton because it meant a lot more. And like Darcy, I was asked after my second season, and now me and Darcy are together. I think Cindy's going to have a bit of a comical trial of me and her under it. She's going to love it. Don't think we're going to annoy her once.
And with you and Cindy coming from the same place, obviously bit separately in time, and then Cindy getting the captaincy and you getting the vice captaincy, that must have been quite special for both of you two to come in and be seen as such important parts of the squad.
Yeah, I think that was a nice touch because he only knew us for a season, and to be honest, I completely did not expect it. I remember when he asked to call me, I thought, oh, here we go, I'm going to get released. And it was the complete opposite. I think what's funny now is that Tamara used to be the Carl Shilton's captain. So she's, that's a bit comical. But I think the other funny story is that she used to be my teacher. So now I love the fact that I can tell her what to do. Sometimes I do it just to wind her up because I have the more authority in a way. But I think on the pitch there's 11 captains anyway. I think everyone's point is just as valuable as anyone else's. But Cindy's great in getting you going and running up the team. But everyone does their own sort of captaincy in the team. Everyone makes sure that you're all going. Everyone encourages each other. The constructive feedback is there. And everyone's point is just as valuable as everyone else's. But it was a massive touch being asked. But also having Cindy there, it made it a bit more comfortable because I felt comfortable talking to Cindy about anything. So it was quite nice.
I have to get more information on. Did you say Tamara was your teacher?
I said this will come up. I think I've dropped it in there just to make it come up. But she used to teach me. She's actually taught me since I was in year 9.
Oh wow!
Or year 8, and then she left and she was learning, and then she come back and was my year 11 to all the way through finishing year 13. And that's the reason I ended up at Carl Shilton, because when I left Palace, she told me to go there. So I went from missing the day to Tamara at night, and it was a struggle.
Now,
I kept calling her miss at training.
before you ever had the football connection, was there ever any sort of student-teacher dislike between one another?
No, we always got. I think I annoyed her, to be honest. If anything, I always called her my mate, and she used to go, "We're not mates," but I knew deep down we were. And she hated it even more that when we become teammates, I was like, well, if you're not my mate, you're my teammate, so technically you are my mate. Which used to annoy her because she always used to say how I wasn't her mate. But no, I think we always got along, and she always set it straight that when I was at school, I was at school, and when I was at football, I was at football. But I mean, yeah, she said that she always knew that she would keep in contact with me because of just the way we were, and we get along really well, and we see the game the exact same. So yeah, it's a bit funny that she's my old teacher, but I never really think of her as a teacher. It's really weird.
Yeah, and you've been a little partnership at times when Keisha's not been available. You two have had to be the two holding midfielders, and you could never imagine telling yourself in year 9 that this person will be your midfield partners in a few years' time.
No, definitely not. I mean, that's why I love it, because I get to tell her what to do sometimes. I can tell her, oh, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and she used to tell me that since year 9, so it's quite nice to have the role on the other hand.
Having to say, I don't think you've done your homework on this.
No, she's great, and even when I was at Carl Shilton, I remember I didn't get anything done for this assignment. She helped me before the game, so it works out.
You got a few bonuses from it.
I did. I got away with certain things. She's probably hating me right now. She's probably thinking, God's sake, Gabby.
Well, as we are approaching towards the final 5 minutes of the stream, I was wondering if you guys have anything that you'd like to plug. Obviously, we do usually end these streams by saying what everyone should be saying. That thank you to NHS and all the essential services that are going around the UK working hard whilst we all stay at home and do nothing for the better of everyone else. But yeah, if there's anything you guys would like to say to get out to the people listening, then please do.
Yeah, I think thank you. If there's any key workers, I know that there's some at Sutton that are still working and they work for the NHS. We can't thank them enough. Everyone's just got to stay at home, save the NHS protect the NHS and save lives, quoting the adverts. But yeah, and everyone who is a key worker, just thank you, and thank you for listening to us, and hopefully we didn't bore you too much. Darcy,
I'm living with my nephew at the moment, so I know what it's like to be quarantined with a young kid at the moment, trying to keep them entertained. But have you been finding that all right for the main part, for the most part?
I mean, yeah, my daughter's 2, so she's at that age now, and they say terrible twos. And she's really at that stage now. She does push me, and she knows how to push me. It has been challenging, but I wouldn't change anything. And we need to stay home, and as Gabby said, stay home, protect our NHS, and save lives. So that is what we're all doing. And yeah, as Gabby said, thank you to all the key workers and everyone out there who's helping us.
And I will say, please keep an eye on the SUFCtv YouTube and Instagram, because we will be uploading the goal of the season vote soon. And there are some absolute crackers on there from both of these two. The funny thing is, Gabby, is that I would, if you'd asked me before this stream how many goals I thought you'd scored, I would have thought it would have been more about 4 or 5. And the fact that you've just...
I missed about 3 sitters.
The fact that you've come out on this show and said, yeah, I've only scored 2 this season, I was a little bit like, oh, well.
Yeah, that's probably because you remember me missing the sitters and thought I probably scored them, because I really should have. They're all right. They were the tap-ins. They were the tap-ins that I missed. It's all right, Gabby. You can play anywhere. Exactly. There's only one Gabby out. No. I'm determined to... I mean, Duncan at the beginning of the season gave me 15 goals to score. Nowhere near it. I'll try to do the 13 and marry it up next season.
But surely you must be counting your assists. Do you know how many assists you've got this season?
Oh, God, no. I think... Oh, Gab, you normally write them down. Well, no, I don't. In my head, after every game, if I've got an assist, I do shout it out and make sure everyone's aware of it. But no, I do reckon I've got a lot of assists. I remember when the throw-ins get me ones, because that's a nice little one. I mean, Darcy, the goal against Crystal Palace is my throw-in, so you're welcome. It's all right.
That's one of your shorter throw-ins as well.
I know. Honestly, I don't know how I've got that throw, but somehow I do. So, not complaining.
There are times when I'm commentating where we will go for a spell where you have to do 3 or 4 in the space of a minute.
What has he said?
And is everything all right? Hello, can you still hear? You can still hear me, yeah?
Right, sorry, it was reconnecting. I have no idea what you just said. Sorry.
It's all right. You've made me lose my track of thought now.
Mind you, because it was a compliment. It was about my long throw, and there's times.
Oh yes. So there's been times in games where there's been 4 or 5 throw-ins in the space of about a minute or a minute and a half, and every single time you've done 4 or 5 steps backwards and gone for the long throw. Does it knacker you out after a few too many?
No, it's do you know what it is? My back that does is how I get the throw so far. If you actually watch, my back bends back so much. It's not anything to do with my biceps, so it doesn't time it at all. But sometimes I take a throw, and just before it, I know it's going to be really short, and I think, oh, for God's sake. But yeah, it's one of them things that it's sort of like a set piece to me. I enjoy taking them.
Yeah, sometimes we get them, and I think bring Cindy up. She's
She can get right on that, can she?
100%.
Again.
One final thing, just so that we can leave with giving the audience something. Do you have anything that you're watching that you'd like to recommend to anyone?
There's nothing on TV, is there? Oh, Josh, you don't know what's going on. There's so much on telly. Look, do you know what? I've missed the EastEnders for this interview. I'm gonna have to catch up. EastEnders is awful, so I don't even feel sorry for it.
They're gonna run out of EastEnders episodes by June, they reckon.
Oh, no. And what are you gonna do then, Darcy? I don't know. I'll probably have to go and catch up or watch all the classics.
That'll keep you there.
Currently on telly now, you got that Chasers where you can go against all chasers. That's quite good. And there's a good series, Bulletproof. I enjoyed that.
Oh yeah.
Seen that. That's really good. Gangs of London's up there and all.
Yeah, I didn't realise how violent it would be, but it is good.
Oh, it's very graphic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't know why it came out like that.
Proper gossiping grandmas there.
But my favourite ever series has got to be Suits, so I recommend that one.
Yeah, it's
And that's like 9 series, so you're sorted.
I'd probably say it was one of the most popular shows of the last 10 years. Like outside of your Game of Thrones and your stuff like that. Great show.
No, it's really good, Dubs. Honestly, give it a go.
And yeah, the princess is in it as well.
She does leave. I'm not a spoiler. I mean, I thought it was quite obvious because she's now obviously princess, but she does leave.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure having both of you on here. I look forward to seeing you both when we can go back to Gander Green Lane and play some more football. You never know, the next time we see each other could be the cup final. And hopefully we get to do some filming with it. If not, I'll come and watch regardless because I've seen the rest of the journey. But yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting to both of you. You two bounce off of each other very well. I thought this was going to be a bit of a nightmare having two of you on call at the same time, but I think we can.
It's major quarantine, hasn't it? It's major quarantine.
It has.
We've made your evening.
The brilliant thing about these live streams is that they're the only thing that I have to do each week. So when I wake up and go, oh, I've got to do this, it reminds me that it's a Tuesday. It's the only thing I've got that reminds me like where I am and what's going on in my life. So yeah, it's been lovely chatting to you guys. And I will see you soon. And I'm sure I'll be back next week. I'm not sure who my guest will be. Whoever Duncan can convince or whoever's willing, I'm sure will be next up. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for being on the call. Thank you for watching, everyone. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you as well. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for doing all the commentary and the videos. It's really beneficial for us.
We
really appreciate it.
Oh, it's honestly my pleasure. All I want to do is I want to commentate as many places as possible, and the fact that Sutton give me the opportunity to do it like regularly and get to know a club properly, and also you're going to think I'm just saying this, but I get to watch a team that plays bloody good football.
Oh, stop it, Conor! I'm blushing. Sorry, I'm blushing.
And I'm willing to swallow my pride, and because I initially thought that I was going to be watching, somewhat like some Sunday League type football, where it was going to be a lot of long balls and a lot of silly fouls and stuff like that. But I was, from the very first game I saw, I was incredibly impressed with the passing play and the teamwork and how you all play. And yeah, it's from what you guys have said, it's brilliant to play for Sutton, and it's brilliant to work there, commentate, do all of it. I think we're all very grateful. Duncan's applauding on the live chat now. So we are going to end it there. But it has been a pleasure chatting to both of you, and we will see you all next week, and end stream.